On the 14th of December, the UFC announced a showdown between the two best lightweights in the world, champion Khabib Nurmagomedov and perennial #1 contender Tony Ferguson at UFC 249. The long-awaited fight was scheduled not for the second time, not for the third time, but for the fifth feckin' time since their first bout, which was supposed to take place all the way back in December of 2015, was cancelled, due to Khabib suffering a severe rib injury. The make-up fight was meant to take place on April 16th, 2016, but doctors pulled Ferguson 2 weeks from the fight due to having blood in his lungs. On April 4th of March 2017, Nurmagomedov is forced to withdraw from the third announced contest after being hospitalised on the day of the weigh-in after a particularly brutal weight cut. A year later, the fight is scheduled yet again for April 8th. However, it is cancelled yet again for the unprecedented fourth time due to Ferguson blowing out his knee. For those out of the loop, you would assume an injury as horrific as this may have occurred while training or during a particularly hard round of sparring. But he actually blew his knee out tripping over a camera wire during a pre-fight press conference on April 1st. April Fool's Day. By the time the fight, by now undoubtedly the most highly anticipated in MMA, was confirmed on December of 2019 for the mind-numbing fifth time, it was common banter among fans of the sport that it would take something of biblical proportions, like an apocalypse or a plague, to stop this fight from happening. Well, here you go. A month before these two were set to put hands on each other in the octagon, the entire world goes on lockdown as the spread of the coronavirus, now known as COVID-19, rapidly escalated into a worldwide pandemic. Now, while I'm not going to compare a fight of any magnitude to the devastation caused by this virus, which, at the time of recording, has already claimed the lives of tens of thousands and infected hundreds of thousands more, I still think I should frame the significance of this fight not just in terms of the half-decade of anticipation, but in the context of the sport today. So, now you already know that this fight was originally scheduled 5 years ago, but what you may or may not be aware of though, is how the landscape of the UFC's lightweight division has changed, and how both men's position within the division has changed also. Back in late 2015, the lightweight division was undeniably solid, with then champion Rafael dos Anjos being a great fighter. The division also had a decent roster of top talent, such as Anthony Pettis and Eddie Alvarez, stalking the upper ranks. However, I would argue that the weight class was overshadowed by others. It didn't have a truly dominant champion like middleweight Chris Weidman. It didn't have the same caliber of hyper-violent super fights, the kind of which champion Robbie Lawler was putting on at welterweight. And it didn't have an athlete with the unstoppable star power of Conor McGregor surging through the ranks. A man who was changing the face of the featherweight division and the sport itself. Also, neither man had held nor challenged for a title at this time, with both of them slowly circling the division's top 10, picking off top-tier lightweights methodically. Cut to March of 2020, and the lightweight division is not only far and away the most competitive weight class in the UFC, it is arguably the most stacked division in the company's history, rivaling other great rosters such as the light heavyweight divisions of the mid to late noughties. On top of that, Khabib is now the undisputed champion of the division, having beaten the likes of Conor McGregor, Edson Barboza, Al Iaquinta and Dustin Poirier, using his unparalleled world-class grappling, relentless pressure and incredible gas tank, amassing an incredible 28 career wins without a single loss, making him, in my opinion, the best pound-for-pound mixed martial artist on the planet, and that includes Jon Jones. As for Ferguson, he hasn't lost a fight in almost 8 years, and is riding an amazing 12-fight win streak, which has seen him defeat the likes of Donald Cerrone, Anthony Pettis, Rafael dos Anjos, and Kevin Lee, with his unorthodox stand-up, exceptional footwork, and amazing ability off of his back. Rounding out the rest of the top 10 as of March 2020, you have Dustin Poirier, Conor McGregor, Justin Gaethje, Dan Hooker, Donald Cerrone, Paul Felder, Charles Oliveira, Al Iaquinta, and Kevin Lee. Just a who's who of exceptional talent. The reason why providing context for this upcoming, or at least hopefully upcoming fight, is so important is because even though MMA fans' disappointment and frustration grew exponentially every time it got cancelled, the fact is it has never held more significance than it does now, and therefore never felt more vital. Even as recently as their fourth scheduled fight, neither man held the belt. Also, Khabib had not yet beaten Conor McGregor, which made him one of the biggest names in the sport. And based on recent performances, which have seen Khabib's stand-up improve leaps and bounds, and Tony's creativity, both standing and on the ground, reaching new heights, both fighters are only continuing to evolve and get better. To exemplify this, the UFC has cancelled all 3 of their upcoming events, beginning with Fight Night London, but not UFC 249, which UFC President Dana White is still adamant is going to take place, even if it's behind closed doors, as planned on April 18th, a mere week before the third cancelled event, and almost certainly in a world still on its knees due to the coronavirus. That's how desperately both the fans and the organisation want to see this fight. But in the grand scheme of things, it doesn't really matter whether or not UFC 249 ends up happening. And I mean that both on a macro and on a micro level. On the macro level, amidst the throes of a global plague, a cage fight simply loses all importance. Much in the same way most all other major sports leagues have suspended competition, if the UFC is forced to follow suit, Khabib, Tony included, it'll matter little to a world at war with a devastating megavirus. One thing you'll notice is that in a lot of my videos, I attempt to tie smaller points together into a cohesive bow, which represents some kind of life lesson. That's partially down to my own hubris, but it's also me just trying to find meaning in the world, searching for life's metaphors in life's moments which, unfortunately, may come across as some kind of useless stream of consciousness bullshit. Now, say what you will about that. There is no doubt that mixed martial arts, along with any other kind of combat sport, serves as a great metaphor for life. You spend years training, sacrificing time, money and brain cells to hone your craft. You develop toughness, build character and perseverance. And once you've paid your dues and sufficiently honed your skills, eventually you can get the opportunity to do what few others ever do. Step into the cage. And after all that, your reward can either be the glory of victory or the heartbreak of defeat. Or, in the case of the upcoming clash, a succession of injuries, ill preparation and just plain bad luck can derail the whole thing before either combatant even gets the opportunity to step foot in the cage. More so than any other fight in the history of MMA, or, dare I say, fighting in general, this fight is the perfect representation of life as a fight. For most people, life is a slog, a series of hurdles punctuated by moments of happiness and setbacks, with the dangling carrot of happiness and prosperity driving them forward. I don't know what the meaning of life is, but I do know that motivation, goals, and work are the only things that can drive us forward. They give us purpose. We know this because when we have no purpose in life, or when we fail time and time again and experience feelings of futility, life can become a dark pit of despair. It can lead to depression, addiction, and, in the worst cases, even suicide. During times like these, when the entire world is on lockdown, it's important to remember to maintain a sense of purpose. Aside from the tragedy of tens of thousands of people dying, and hundreds of thousands more falling prey to COVID-19, millions of people are out of work. Thousands of businesses have shut down, with the gloomy prospect that many of them may never recover once the virus dissipates. And this is nobody's fault, and, in a way, that's the cruelest thing of all. But now is not the time to start giving clout to conspiracy theories, suggesting that China unleashed this virus purposefully to harm the Western world. Because if that was their intention, let's just say the execution left a lot to be feckin' desired. Nor should we tolerate anybody in the Chinese government who are now looking their noses down at us on this side of the world for not having effectively contained the virus. I mean, I'm sure it was an accident, but we all know where the spread began, so this would be the time to just keep your mouth shut, join the rest of the world with a dustpan and brush, and try to clean up this whole mess. However, life's problems are rarely rationed out. They often have a way of compounding on top of one another. So for many, this lockdown and isolation is just another pile atop a currently existing shite heap. So, in moments like this, how do we keep going? And how can we seek inspiration and wisdom from a cage fight? You see, whether or not this fight actually goes ahead or not is irrelevant. It will simply be another example of things coming together to give all involved the payoff they desperately deserve, or falling apart as they have done 4 times up until this point. Best case scenario, fight goes ahead. Millions of people buy the pay-per-view, both men step into the cage fit and healthy, and when it's all said and done, the best man in the best division stands tall as the undisputed lightweight champion, and the best in the world, period. Worst case scenario, the fight is cancelled, and after being axed for the 5th time, it never gets booked again, and the question as to who the better fighter is goes unanswered forever. I did a video a few days back analysing the end of No Country for Old Men, and, given a successful copyright dispute, it should hopefully be up on my channel within a month. In that video, I touched on the film's general lack of justice as it pertains to its righteous characters, and how main antagonist Anton Chigurh often leaves the fate of his victims up to the random nature of a coin toss. And that is an unfortunate fact of reality sometimes. Life is a fickle mistress. It can dish out good fortune or tragedy almost at random. Some bad people are born into prosperity and thrive. Some good people are born into squalor and die. And so it may be the case that, after 5 years in the making and 4 cancellations, which at times have been the fault of one party or neither party, the 4th of which prompted Dana White to vow never make the fight again, all their hard work, blood, sweat and tears may have all been for nothing in the end. One thing I can tell you, however, is that even if the fight never takes place, neither man will stop training or fighting as a result. And that, in a way, is the biggest takeaway from all of this. And why, pulling it back to my previous point, it really doesn't matter on the micro level in the context of MMA. With each subsequent fight cancellation, both men only got better and only found more success within their career. Outside of the octagon, both men have suffered in their lives. Khabib was born and raised in the mountains of Dagestan, one of the countries in the Caucasus which, since Khabib's childhood, has been decimated by conflict between Russian forces and Muslim Chechens, claiming tens of thousands of lives. Ferguson, while having never lived through a conflict like this, has suffered with serious mental health problems, which have been brought to the fore in recent times. So, in a way, both men have been living through one kind of war or another, and both men have not only survived, but have thrived in spite of it. Look, as I said in previous videos, I'm not trying to act as some kind of self-help guru. I'm not selling you anything or even trying to change your perspective on things. I just find that in times like these, we look for meaning in our lives. For many, the coronavirus has taken away much of what they had to live for, either temporarily or, unfortunately for some, for good. So where do you turn? Some look to the Bible for inspiration, some look for a mentor, some have even taken up cooking at home as a distraction from the chaos outside their door. All are good, as long as what you're doing isn't self-destructive or harmful to others. It's better than sitting around doing nothing. For me, I'm thinking the long game here. Once this is all blown over, there are going to be a number of significant events that are going to change my life significantly. And like many other people, I'm more concerned with how I'm going to pick up the pieces, start afresh and, with the grace of God, continue to evolve, rather than how I'm going to stave off boredom for a couple of weeks or months. 5 years this fight has been in the making, and it may not happen at all. But that's not the point, because as these two warriors have proven, in life it's better to move forward, work hard, persevere through tough times, all while having faith that things will improve, than to simply lay down and accept defeat as a fatalistic reality of your existence. For me, I believe we can take inspiration from the fact that, as exemplified here, even when one or many of life's avenues suddenly closes on us, the strong, creative, and, most importantly of all, those who have the balls to simply persevere will find a way.